Our next guests have been on the front lines of the future with research that has taken them into cutting-edge labs, private testing facilities, and invitation-only showcases around the world that they have now chronicled in their new book launching right here at South by called The Future Normal: How We Will Live, Work, and Thrive in the Next Decade. You like that? Very subtle product placement.
It's not subtle, but I like the not subtleness.
Yeah, thank you. Please welcome Rohit Bhargava and Henry Coutinho Mason to the South by Southwest studio. And this, again, is their book. Congrats, guys. It dropped this week.
That's right.
How y'all feeling?
Excited, nervous, you know, all of it, all together.
First week jitters, first week joy, and the first week you are here. This is South by Southwest studio. Thank you for joining us. You all call yourselves reluctant futurists. Gentlemen, what is a reluctant futurist?
That was actually what caused us to bond in the first place, because we saw so many futurists focused on 2050 and what's going to happen then, and a lot of that is...
Bro, I just want to get to 2030.
I know, right? Or maybe 2025 even. And so we wanted to focus on the near future. So we jokingly called ourselves near futurists, and it was sort of like across the room, we're like, oh, you say that too? And once we saw that, we're like, okay, we have to write a book together.
Well, I mean, that's a nice little origin story. That's a Cliff Notes version. But how did you two come? Because you all have like a very vastly different kind of global footprint, but it's kind of intersected. How did Henry meet Rohit? How did this happen? Henry, go for it.
Yeah, so we met in New York, actually, in an event, as Rohit said. We bonded, and then in the pandemic, I'd left my previous company, and I called up Rohit, and I said, you know, hey, I've got a bit of time on my hands. Fancy writing a book together? Well, I think I pitched you the book, and you said, actually, how about we write this together? And I said, well, this sounds fun. And, you know, this is only the second time we've met. Last night.
Whoa!
So we've written the book,
yeah.
and the second time we met. So that was kind of weird last night, was Rohit handed me the physical book and said, here it is, and here I am.
Yeah.
And you know, it's so wild, right? Because we're of that generation where we could say, oh, that makes perfect sense. But 20 years ago, if you told our parents, oh, that by the way, I'm going to write a book with someone. It's going to drop at South by Southwest, and I'm only going to meet that person twice. Like, what are you talking about?
Right. They assume that you go off to a Greek island together and just like work on this thing for a long period of time.
Yeah, and so what's normal to us now was not normal back then, right? The wild, crazy ideas. And speaking about making something that seems abnormal normal, right before you walked in, Henry, you showed me that you're wearing what my dad wears for diabetes. But you don't have diabetes. And then you walked in hungrily eating a sandwich, and then you had a banana in your hand. Bro, what's happening? What's happening with the banana? What's happening with the diabetes badge? Talk to me.
Yeah, so one of the chapters in the book, we look at what we call metabolic monitoring. And this is the idea, as you say, it's starting already. People are doing this. And that's, you know, you talk about being a reluctant futurist. One of the other ways we phrase it is we're nowists, because a lot of the stuff that will become into the future is already here today. And so look, let me show you.
This is a family-friendly show.
So I am not a diabetic, and diabetics will recognize this. So this
My
patch,
dad's got it, yeah.
It's an amazing story. So this is created by this company called Super Sapiens. Well, they provide the app. And Phil Sutherland, the founder of that, he was the youngest person in the world at the time to be diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. He was told that by 25, or his parents were told by 25 he would be dead or blind. Age 30, he'd founded the world's first professional all-diabetic cycling team. So he's it's an amazing inspirational figure.
He proved them wrong.
He proved them wrong. He had a whole team of all diabetics competing at a professional level. And this, they created, because if you're diabetic, of course, and you're a professional athlete, this is really important. You absolutely have to know your glucose. And then what happened is the other cyclists started to say, well, maybe I could use this too. So Chris Froome, and then it spread to other athletes. So Lewis Hamilton, the F1 driver, he wears it. Eliud Kipchoge, the first man to run a sub-2 hour marathon, he runs it. And so you can start to see, we like to call it, it's like the Tesla strategy.
The what strategy?
The Tesla strategy of spotting the future. You know, you create a product that is maybe, you know, smaller use case, expensive, overpriced, depending on your perspective, you know, appeals to a certain demographic. But you can start to see, if you think about where is the technology going, the technology will improve, the costs will fall, and actually what we're finding is that, and you know, for anyone you've got diabetics in your family, over 100 million Americans have pre-diabetes, and 80% of them don't know about it. So there's a huge swathe of the population who would benefit from knowing their glucose levels. And even if you're not pre-diabetic, just knowing about your energy levels, sleeping better, performing better. So you can see...
It can help you make better choices.
Yeah, that's right. That's what's fascinating about these things. Like what Henry was saying, that it is now. People assume, okay, you wrote a book about the future, so this is stuff we'll see eventually. but we're seeing it right now. It's just only a small percentage of people are seeing it.
So help me connect the dots, right? Because we're all living in the now, but you all say, you know what? I'm going to take 3 steps forward, and I'm going to tell you all where this is going, whether it comes to population, food, technology, health. Yeah. How do both of you connect the dots and have the chutzpah, if you will,
yeah.
or the humble brag to flex and say, oh, we're going to write a book about it. This is what the future is going to look like.
Yeah, and put it into a book where you can't change it, right? It's not a blog post.
You cannot change it yet.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And what's interesting about this process that we use to get there is we looked at so much writing about the future, but we also looked at content like entertainment, movies, films, TV shows. And the thing is, in the short term, everything seems like it's possible. We can find love. The bad guys can become the good guys. I mean, every Bollywood story, right, is like you find the person across the garden and you run towards each other.
Which is how it happens in real life. Yeah.
Totally, or how we wish shit.
Yeah,
exactly.
Sure.
Mine too, right? Yeah. But what happens in the long term is we see these dystopian things where we melt the ice caps and we have to move off of Earth onto somewhere else. Yeah, and like exactly. So if we imagine a future that's going to be a disaster, then we'll find a way to create that. And the challenge is that there are people who are imagining a different future. And we have this, we called it future pessimism, that is rampant out there. We just see this stuff and we're like, oh, Miami's going to melt into the water and like we're going to have fires and more. And like, so it's fascinating. You look at all of these surveys where children, I mean, not just children, but like people 18 to 34 believe their future will be worse than what their parents were.
And you can't blame them.
You can't blame them.
They're surviving a pandemic, there's climate change, there's rising income inequality, the rise of fascism. And we had Andrew Zimmern, a famous chef who was our first guest, and he said the same thing, that, you know, when it comes to the youth, they look to him and they say, we don't have time, it's over, global warming. Right. And what I really like about the title of this book is not only is it the future normal, how we will live and work, but you are bold and you believe we will actually thrive. So, Henry and Rohit, if there's an 18 to 34-year-old watching right now, they're listening to this. They're like, I cap BS. How can we thrive in the future when we are dying from climate change right now? Your response.
I'll respond first and then maybe you respond too. I would say that there are people who are changing the world for the future right now. And the problem is they don't get the funding. We don't buy from them. We don't know that their products exist. Case in point, glitter. Glitter sucks for the environment. It's basically microplastic. And we throw it up in the air because we want to celebrate. So obviously you should say to people, well, don't use glitter. But then like,
everyone loves glitter, bro.
Everyone loves glitter. Kids. Yeah, you got kids. Like he was talking about his daughter, like you guys love glitter. You have daughters. My boys were not so much into the glitter, but Carnival, right? Like lots of glitter. There's biodegradable glitter that you can buy right now. But nobody's heard of it. Well, most people haven't heard of it. That's an easy change for you to make. And all of a sudden now you're not just throwing microplastic in the air and putting it straight into the water. You're choosing to use something biodegradable. And imagine that story multiplied by 1,000, because that's what exists right now. This is not the future possible, right? This is the future normal.
Like future now.
This is, future now. This is happening right now. And if we just knew about those things, I mean, we're both, like our footwear, you can't see it right now, but like I'm wearing these shoes.
Show it off,
show it off. Yeah, well, my shoes, actually, I'm going to be wearing them on stage. I'm not wearing them now, but they're made out of recycled bottles. Henry's shoes, tell them the story of the shoes. It's
these shoes are incredible. So these shoes are the world's first biodegradable sneakers. So 100% biodegradable. The soles, you can grind these up and put them in your garden, and they will fertilize. They're nutrient-based. Every material in here is natural, right? So there's the cotton that then.
So literally, remember that the dirt in the shoe with the plant coming out.
This is
the shoe itself is the plant.
Yeah, and normally, right, this is fossil fuel-based, right? The rubber, the soles, and it's it's oil-based and it's non-renewable. And these guys, they're an amazing company called Natural Fiber Welding, and they have actually raised a bunch of money. They've raised like 85 million from people like BMW and Patagonia invest in them, but they are just making these incredible products, but they're still small scale. In comparison to the overall how many 20 billion plus pairs of sneakers that are made every year. And so really, part of our purpose with the book is exactly as Rohit said, going back to your question, what advice would you give people? Don't just hear about these companies, don't just buy from them, go and get a job with them, because we believe these are the companies of the future.
You can make money, you can get jobs, you can get the same quality goods, and you can actually help the environment and make sure that we hopefully get to 2050, right? Well, we're talking about the future now, right? And the big buzzword for this South by is AI. Last year was crypto. Didn't go so well. But this year it's AI, right? And I'm of that generation. I think AI, man, my brain goes to HAL from 2001 and Skynet, right? Yeah. But AI is, you can't separate it. Right. And so how can we, well, let me throw this. Your concerns with AI And if you don't have any concerns, flip side, how we can thrive with AI.
So there are a lot of concerns. The biggest concern with AI, in my perspective, is the same that is the concern with other technology, which is that the people who are putting it out into the world and creating it don't have the ethics that are required to do something good with it.
Twitter, Facebook, what?
Everything,
Sorry, my
everything,
bad.
everything,
Yeah.
right? And when that is the case, then you have a really dangerous situation.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's not so much the technology that in itself is dangerous, it's the people who are in charge of it who say it needs to be used in this way or adapted in this way. I think the positive potential of it is that it's going to open up a whole new class of jobs for people who are good at using it. And so you think about AI, the first question people ask us, because this book came out right in the middle of the whole ChatGPT thing, and we write about it, is did you use ChatGPT to write the book?
Did you use ChatGPT to write the book?
In fact, no, we did not. But we did a couple things that were really interesting. One is we took a chapter of the book that was called Augmented Creativity, which is literally using AI to be faster at doing creative tasks. And we said, we wrote the chapter, and then we prompted ChatGPT separately to do 2 versions of that same chapter with AI only. That was interesting. Our chapter was better, in our opinion.
Subjectively, in your opinion, yeah.
Subjectively, totally.
But could someone read the ChatGPT version and be like, oh, a human wrote this?
Well, debatable.
Okay.
But what was interesting, what more even interesting than that was we took a chapter, we put it into ChatGPT, and we said, write us a 1-star negative review of how much you hated the chapter and why. And what it came up with was some holes that maybe we talked to each other and we're like, maybe we should make that argument better. Like maybe it didn't land for people because it didn't land for AI. That was interesting.
Yeah. And the other way I like using it actually, and I think this will change because it's improving so quickly, but when we were writing the book, to almost use it like an anti-prompt. So to say, okay, write about the future of continuous glucose monitoring or the future of food, and then you know what the really obvious stuff is, you know where the middle of the road is, and then our purpose with this is to make people think a little bit differently, to provoke. So we often would talk about how do we go past this, what's our contribution that is going to beat the AI. So it's kind of like a creative sparring partner.
And hopefully the sparring partner doesn't kill us and go operational, right? You mentioned future of food. We're in South by Southwest, foodie town. I got my crew here that obsessed with food all the time. Franz right now is salivating. He's our writer. Future of food, we had, like I said, Andrew Zimmern here. He was talking about how to make food sustainable. Right. We also have food waste, and we have climate change. There's food that's going endangered now, right? Like avocado and honey and almonds.
Yeah.
And Andrew was talking about synthetic food. He's talking about Soylent. You guys talk about food. Tell us the future of food. What will be the normal of food in 15 years, if we can make it to 15 years?
Well, so Soylent is a really interesting example. I mean, there are companies like that who are making food out of nothing. I mean, out of air, and creating proteins that we can then use as ingredients, right? So when we think of food, there's like food, which is things that you just grow and you eat, or that you produce and you eat.
I like that, food.
Right, or there's ingredient food, right? It's like proteins that you may not necessarily just eat by itself, but it transforms what you can actually make with it if you use it as an ingredient, which is something that chefs and people who are making food are really excited about, because now, I mean, case in point, like insect proteins, right? Like insect flowers,
we talked about
cricket
insects.
flour, right? Like that's huge, not only for humans, but as feed that we can use for animals, right? And there's some really interesting stuff out of Africa. There's a group that's using like black soldier flies that we wrote about.
What's happening with black soldier flies?
They're using it as feed for cattle.
When talking about AI, they're using AI to optimize the growing, because this is apparently the quickest animal to convert inputs into protein. So for animal feed, it's the most efficient way in 8 days or whatever the growing cycle is for a harvest of black soldier flies. And so they have little cameras sitting above it, and they optimize everything. And this is the accelerated pace of learning. And it's fascinating. And I think you touched on the future of food. The other angle, going back to your synthetic food, we write about that in the book. And for me, there's a bigger implication of this. So there's what happens behind the scenes in the production of the food, but what about to the consumer? And I think what the position we take in the book is we're about to enter into this really interesting era. When you think about luxury food for the last decade, it's been about a generation, whole foods, natural, artisan, small batch, local.
If you can afford it.
If you can afford it.
Right.
But what about when synthetic food, which is what we think of as processed junk, right? That's the stuff that, if you can't afford the whole foods, that's what you're left with. But it's so tasty.
Yeah, so tasty.
And what does it look like if actually the synthetic stuff starts to become better because it's more sustainable? As you say, with bee-free honey, or the one
Maybe
I love.
better for you.
There's this French company which is making lab-grown foie gras. how many people, kind of deep down, you love foie gras? It's so delicious and creamy.
Well,
and
you
rich.
do because you're English. I mean, you know.
He's like, what? Yes.
Everyone loves foie gras.
And people were like, foie gras? What?
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't really want to eat it because I feel guilty. Right? I don't want to feel like, oh, my indulgence is causing a whole load of geese to be, have their...
But I mean, it's a good point because if you talk about what's normal now that was considered abnormal, Impossible Burgers. Right? We were having, me and Franz were talking about this like 10, 15 years ago. You're like, eat this plant-based burger. It's better for the environment. You're like, oh God, please, mama, don't make me. But now it's delicious. And now you got Impossible Burger that's up in the game. And now like a lot of folks who aren't vegetarian or vegan, they're like, I'll just take it because it's tastier.
Yeah, I mean, across every industry, right? What was fascinating about the process of writing this book is that we didn't just look at, oh, it's happening right here in this one space, right? I mean, we looked at finance, retail, healthcare. I mean, lots of healthcare there. We talked about psychedelics there. I mean, that's a whole other category.
Right.
Like, this book allowed us over the course of 3 years to just dip our minds into so many different categories. And we even have a story in there about carpet company. And we're going to be showing some of the carpet on stage tomorrow that is carbon negative. Like, it's actually helping to make the environment better through the production of carpet. And if you know about, sort of, carpet has a bad rap because like after it's done, it goes in landfills. It's like really bad for the environment.
Also, the people who make carpets oftentimes,
Yeah, I mean, maybe, right? But like they're shifting, and like if an entire industry can shift in that way, I mean, that's hope right there.
Okay, so I want to, with the final minute that we have, I want to shift your opinion on something.
You could try.
I've heard a rumor, and it's a rumor that broke my heart.
Okay, tell me.
First of all, spoiler alert, we're both South Asians.
Right.
If it wasn't clear enough. South Asians love gobi. Gobi is
Incorrect statement.
Okay, wait. South Asians who know love gobi called cauliflower.
Yes.
On behalf of all South Asian people,
yes.
I have to defend gobi, cauliflower, because I heard that you have a personal, almost sadistic dislike of cauliflower.
It's not sadistic. I find it perfectly logical.
Okay.
Because first of all, cauliflower is terrible tasting. Second of all other food that is available to humanity is so much better than that. So why would you waste your time with that? And I am not a picky eater. I mean, I will eat anything that's put in front of me except for gobi. That is my one thing I will never eat.
The future of cauliflower, according to you, is?
Hopefully demise. Quick demise. That's what I hope for.
And Henry, the future of cauliflower, can we create the impossible cauliflower that Rohit can actually like?
I think we're going to make a foie gras tasting cauliflower for Rohit.
That's all.
diabolical.
Take the profits from this book and invest in that. Rohit,
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Fantastic conversation. Everyone, buy the book. The book here, again, is The Future Normal: How We Will Live, Work, and Thrive in the Next Decade. And for conference participants, you can catch their talk Sunday, March 11th in the ACC Ballroom D. Saturday. Thank you. Saturday in the ACC Ballroom D at 11:30 a.m. And they will be signing copies of their new book, which again, The Future Normal, from 1 to 1:30 p.m. in room 10C. Thank you all for watching. You can find our complete schedule of interviews on our website at sxsw.com/studio. And our studio interviews are also live streaming during the conference on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/sxsw. Stay tuned. We've got a whole lot more coming your way from the South by Southwest studio.